what work is progressing, what work is stagnating. Because if we get towards the end of the summer and we don't have progress, then we have other decisions to make. So in your packets, Mary Ann included a spreadsheet for you that kind of shows where we're at. You can see projects that have completed. Some have come in under budget. She said some are returning money. We've got 4 that are in the red as far as progress. So I'm going to have Mary Ann just hit the high spots of that spreadsheet for us.
Yes, so, and we will put this in the packet every, once a month. Right now, we have almost just shy of 1.9 million to allocate. That is up from the last time that we looked at the schedule, and basically, it is due to projects being finished under budget. So there, you have 1.889,584 to allocate. We do have our spending to date of the 15 million that's 15.5 that was available is at 7.8, which leaves 5.8 budgeted. Again, going back to, there are several projects that are related to city staffing. That includes Tracy's position and some firefighter positions, those positions, and then also some staffing time from community development on loan education or homeowner education. We need to spend those funds by December 31st of '24. That is the cutoff for staffing costs. And then the rest of the projects, the contract must be signed by December 31st, '24 with expenses through 2026. And we've just got some of the highlights for specific dates on bidding, things like that.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, and I think Sarah does too. The first one that I have a question on that I saw, the 4 that are in the red are things that we talked about before. All of them were things that we had approved, infill new construction, affordable rental units. We know that they're working towards alternative projects to use some of that money after they had run into some zoning hurdles. The one, though, that we had approved, homebuyer education and counseling and closing assistance, that one was, I guess, argued at the council level to start with. We approved it. There was not robust participation in the program. We were looking to use some of those funds to create a carrot to get participation up, to get people to be smarter homebuyers and be home ownership ready. Is Tammy still here? She's not. So I think that's one thing we need to know from
Okay.
Tammy. If they're at our next meeting, I'd like to know if that has moved the needle at all in participation. If it hasn't, I would like us to rethink that plan, because we've really been waiting now a good year. And with the funds in place, if we're not making progress, that one stands out to me as something that we maybe could spend better somewhere else. Sarah, go ahead with your comments.
I guess the one that I'm curious about, the lead service line replacement one, that was just something we recently approved, right?
Yes.
Because there's no, it's not saying necessarily on schedule, behind schedule, or completed. It's
Right.
still on schedule,
That is
though.
relatively newly approved, yes.
And it's still on schedule.
That was to fill a gap that we had from DNR grants, right? From
Yes.
This was before the CIP project even, right?
Yeah.
That we had a year of short grants from DNR? Looking at Eric's nodding. Okay.
Because that was the 265 that's already been spent. And then there's an extra 234 that's going to be spent by the time it needs to.
We'll bring up the Public Works Director if he can walk us through where we're at with that. Welcome.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Originally, that was for a lead service line replacement plan required by the DNR and the lead and copper rule, the revisions that are coming out. In '23, we were short on funding. We didn't get any funding from the DNR for lead service line replacement, so we focused on just the areas that we were doing road reconstruction. For the private side, lead service line replacement, the additional cost, because initially that was 265, and it went up to 322,000. That additional ARPA funding, what that funded was actually using the plan that we gave to DNR and seeing what the, pros and cons were of it and how well it worked. And that's actually the plan that we used moving in with CIP. So those funds are actually expended.
Okay.
Already, they're completed through '23.
Okay.
Okay.
So so the project itself is only going to be 322, so is it going to have extra funds available? Will you use the whole 500,000?
No, we won't. So there will be additional funds. I think we're just waiting on final payments and stuff for
Okay.
that, but the project is complete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
we'll be
so
able
that
to
would
get
be some more that we could reallocate then too, if necessary. Anybody else have questions on the spreadsheet? Go ahead.
I would just make one comment. You know, if you recall, we're living within the 10 million of lost revenue, and then the rest has to be used for water, sewer, storm, or another type of, I guess, highlighted use of ARPA. So the 1.8 million that's available unencumbered at this point, once you encumber that, then if we have projects come back, we will have to use it for one of those three specific uses because we will have expended our 10 million for lost revenue. So, you know, allocating the full 1.8 for lost revenue purposes, which is basically anything that is a general government focus, is fine. But let's say something comes back, like this lead service line replacement. When that comes back, we'll likely have to use it for water, sewer, or storm
Okay,
improvements, or another use like housing or something like that.
Right.
And I can articulate those a little bit clearer.
well, and
for
it
you,
would be a
too.
good idea to maybe have some indication of what those projects might look like. If we
Yeah.
needed extra funding in LSL, if we needed extra funding in, maybe street and road reconstruction to maybe relieve some cost on we were using ARPA to offset some of the borrowing in the utility for normal street projects.
Yeah.
You know, if we could maybe do some more of that this
Street
year.
wouldn't
If
be allowed,
street's
but
not-
storm would.
Stormwater,
Or
okay.
water or sewer. And Eric
Right.
and I have been meeting on coming up with some alternatives if we have additional funds become available.
Sarah?
So that wouldn't count for like roofs on like water, like, okay.
Oh, a roof on a water plant?
Yeah.
Maybe, yes. I
Okay.
could look at that, I would imagine. So it's basically anything to support water or sewer or stormwater infrastructure.
Okay.
Okay. All right, additional questions on the spreadsheet? If not, we'll see this spreadsheet over and over with repeated updates, so we'll have that. Okay, so item number 6 is discussion and possible action regarding ARPA funding requests and related budget modification for police department parking lot perimeter fence. You'll recall that we had talked with the department last month about that. We had a couple different options, some cheaper than others, pros and cons of all. And we were originally intending to score that project for this meeting and make a decision. Since we have so many other things to all score together, we decided to just score them all as a batch for April 9th. So we won't ask you to make a decision on that fence tonight, even though the project is no different than what we heard 2 weeks ago. Was there anything else on that, Mary Ann? I think that was,
No, I think on the ranking matrix, I just used the most expensive project, knowing that you can
that we have the
modify
option to
Yes.
choose it if, okay.
Yep.
At least then it could only be cheaper, depending
Right.
on, okay. So yeah, that's important to note. Item number 7, so we don't need to act on 6. Item 7 is discussion and possible action regarding ARPA funding requests and related budget modification for deferred capital projects. This is the remaining list of incomplete CIP, right?
Yes.
The things that we were not able to fund
Yes.
with borrowing. Okay, so I guess if you wanted to walk us through that, but we'll score these against our ARPA matrix as well.
Yes, and we did include the applications that were included in CIP. Those were improvements to the street facility, office spaces of $60,000, LED lighting upgrade in the DPW facilities of $45,000, their fence and gate replacement of $30,000. Oops. Geez, sorry. Making things bigger isn't always as easy.
No, it's difficult. It's either too big or not big enough.
The public safety roof replacement of $150,000. Oh, I think I switched pages too, sorry.
It's okay.
Let's see.
Asphalt
paving. This was not a deferred project, but, we had talked about things that we could spend quickly as we approach or enter into contracts as we approach year end. So that would be something that you could do. My recommendation would be to break that into smaller projects because there are some stipulations. If you have $1 million capital project, I have to look at what all of those rules are because we haven't experienced one of those yet. But we might have some additional compliance requirements, so it might be easier to just, oftentimes like the street projects that we do, we have usually street project A, B, and C in a year, and they group the projects based on the location in the city. So like in '24, the southeast side is one project and gets bid out specifically because, all of the startup costs and locating to the area and setting up their work.
Would it be possible with a project like that, obviously if we were going to break it into smaller projects, engineering has a list of the pavement ratings of streets all over town, and they've got a miles-long backlog of streets. One year, we took our street and road budget in SISM, and we actually fanned it out to different areas to make a more widespread impact in different districts rather than centralize it all in one area of town. That was actually pretty well received. This year, we have them all consolidated into one neighborhood, so you can get in, fix the stuff, and get out, so people aren't under construction for like 10 years. But with something like this, if it was a added asphalt paving project, would it be possible for us to locate the worst of the worst, like the 10 worst streets, and, maybe look at, asphalt overlay on those streets? I think that would be something, SISM has talked about, maybe historically, we never did overlay on streets where the infrastructure underneath was in bad shape, but they are so far behind on that list that it looks like we may have to start to overlay streets because they're way more than 10 years from rebuild, and the pavement just won't hold. So is it something like that, Eric, where we could find the worst of the worst and go do them?
Yeah, that's pretty much what Alan's done. Like, if the map is in there, it's pretty widespread throughout the city
Okay.
in different sections from west to east, north and south. And all of those, poor to very poor streets that are listed. And I think the other thing is we can, in the past when we've done asphalt overlays, we've broken those into different projects too, because typically American Asphalt has a bit of a monopoly, right, on large projects. So if we break it out, maybe we'll get some smaller players to bid and maybe get a little bit better cost too. So, so we could have two projects, or we could even look at maybe doing something advantageous to doing some of this in-house as well. So there's
Okay.
different things
I
that
think
we
that's
could work
important,
on.
and I think that would be interesting as far as picking what streets there are. I mean, that might be maybe a job for SISM. I don't know as far as what the worst of the worst is. They've been studying that, but, even if we could get maybe the worst 7 or 8, I know it's, over 100,000 for a block roughly, so
Yeah, I don't know how
I think
many.
the other
maybe,
thing.
maybe we won't get 7 or 8 at today's bid prices,
Yeah.
but
I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is if we're going to do lead surface line replacement, we want to make sure that we're not paving something we're going to immediately tear up for.
but I think it also would help for us to look at what census tracts those lie in as well. Because if we have the opportunity to fix some that are really bad in areas that need that help, that, ordinarily would maybe qualify for block grant, but there's not enough block grant. I mean, something like that too. Oh, Alan, welcome.
Hi. So yeah, if you look at the map was included in your, so it is kind of spread out throughout the city, and all those streets that are labeled on there are, like I said, my staff report theirs, they're like 2s or 3s on a scale from 1 to 10, which means they're pretty much, they need reconstruction or repaving.
It's page 84.
So, it was, you talk about the worst of the worst. These are some of the worst of the worst. Like Eric also had said, that don't have lead service laterals under them, because what we don't want to do is overlay a street and then within the next 5 years, they're coming out and doing the lead service lateral replacement. So all these streets were identified as streets that were in very poor shape, that have copper services underneath them, or very few lead laterals. So,
Well, that would be efficient.
and it is like Eric said, there are some on the east, some on the west. We tried to pick some, and I did put in there, I think there was like 3.8 miles of road that would be done with this. Yeah, about 3.5. And, that can vary on the width of the street. If you look at Pine Ridge Boulevard around Aspirus Hospital, some of that's in really bad shape, but that's 4 lanes wide with turn lanes, so that takes a little bit more money. So, so you could do a little bit more if you took that off, but I think that's a worthy project based on the condition of the roads down there and the amount of traffic that gets.
Okay.
And, you could break it into east side, west side, or you could break it into some smaller segments, but I just wanted to say that it is spread out throughout the whole city.
Yeah, I like the idea of a mix. I think that whenever we can have a positive impact on multiple neighborhoods, I think people appreciate that. And the number one complaint we hear all the time is fix our streets, right? So, thank you for this. I think that's super helpful. Does anyone have questions? Sarah, go ahead.
So when you would replace these, would that give the homeowners good opportunity to replace the lead lines on their side? Like since we're doing,
Well, these streets don't have the lead service ladder, so there wouldn't be lead service replacements on these streets if we overlay them.
okay.
So the
they-
patch would last longer then?
Right.
In theory.
It wouldn't be getting tore up. I mean, in future years for asphalt overlay, I think there's going to be opportunity when these streets do get the lead service ladder replacements done, then it's a good time to come in and overlay them after, because there's going to be kind of patchwork. Right now, we're trying to stay out of those areas so that we're not duplicating an effort, but in the upcoming years, after we do some of these lead service ladder replacements, then you come in and overlay those streets. So,
Okay. All right, so I think that's good. Back to the score sheet then.
Just one quick question.
Go ahead.
So what would be like the minimum of a smaller project? Because a total would be like 1.5 million, right?
$1 million.
$1 million. So $1 million to do all of the ones you have listed on Plan B?
and correct, I mean, you can scale that
Ish.
back. We just tried to come up with streets, we did some cost estimating, that this is what I wanted to show you what we could do with $1 million. If it's 500,000, we can, scale that back and take some of those streets away, but this is kind of an idea of what $1 million would get you. And when we're talking overlay, we're talking the mill, bring in a mill machine, mill off 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and then put 1.5 inches to 2 inches back, so it gives you a good surface.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And that normally lasts about 10 years, right?
10 to 15 years, depending
Yeah.
on the condition of the road.
And if they're residential traffic, more to the higher end, right? I mean, as far as,
Correct, like something like Pine Ridge Boulevard that gets a lot more traffic, that's not going to last as long. But if you look
Right.
at, some of these smaller, like River Hill Circle, or, some of these other ones that are just residential, you
Yeah.
might get more than that.
okay,
But it's not a complete reconstruction, obviously. You don't take the curb and gutter out. You don't do the sewer and the water. You just basically mill and fill.
sure. Carol?
Thank you. On those streets, how is their curb? I just know in my neighborhood, a lot of the curbs are pretty bad. So I'm just curious, what happens? Are these streets where there is still a curb? Maybe some of them don't even have curbs. I don't know. But when you do asphalt overlay, is it on streets? Is it a mixture? Do they have curbs? Are they curbs falling apart, but you still do just the asphalt? I'm just curious.
Most of these have curbs in decent condition. If the curbs are too far gone, then it makes it difficult to overlay, or you get standing water in the curb line. Some of them, curbs are in varying condition, but for the most part, they have curb that's in decent condition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll continue on down the list. Jefferson Ramp, I think, was next on this
Yep.
sheet, right?
For 300,000, I don't know if you want to provide some additional information on that too.
Yeah, sure. So in your packet, we had Walker Parking Consultants do a conditions assessment on the Jefferson Street ramp. The initial budget that we budgeted for this year had $300,000. The needs assessment came back at almost $600,000 of work that needs to be done on the Jefferson ramp, and that was included in your packet. Just kind of the scope of the work is basically concrete work, caulking, or traffic proof, waterproofing. So there's a shortfall in that budget of about $300,000. So this ARPA funding would fill that gap to get a full project, to do a full condition repair of the Jefferson ramp.
Okay. Let me flip back to page 1 on the spreadsheet, right, where we start with the chamber upgrade, is that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, council chambers. This one we had in the CIP. We also brought it to ARPA earlier in the process. Obviously, it's to upgrade most of the communication equipment here so that we can, do a better job of communicating via television or online with the residents. The public safety had a couple of requests that were deferred in CIP, their roof replacement, and then the parking lot security that you had heard earlier. Also, Oh, do I have the public safety building in here twice?
It's in two
Oh,
columns.
Sorry.
It's got money on the other one
Yeah.
though, so.
And then also another, because I think, Sarah, you had asked for the list of projects that didn't get funded. The only one that didn't get funded that has not found alternate funding is the sit-stand for desks for the police department. That is 50,000. I'm not sure that they're going to use that whole 50, but that was their original request. And then there were several park projects that were deferred during capital projects, and Andy is here from the Parks Department to speak on those. That includes a tennis court replacement, playground equipment, and 2 parking lots.
Thank you. Actually, a question on the playground with ARPA funding. Is that eligible to submit as a cooperative purchase agreement, or is that not eligible?
Oh, I guess I would like to do a little bit more research on that. I think it would be, as long as our procurement policies allow it, which
Okay.
they do.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, because otherwise it was going to knock one off your list. But,
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah. So as those were ranked in there, I believe Alexander was ranked highest as far as the previous needs assessment, and then the Sylvan parking lot, the playground at River Highlands, and then the Riverside parking lot. Our concern really with the tennis court is the safety and the playability of the surface right now. It requires a complete rebuild, and we're looking at our other tennis courts in town, and Memorial's next, Oak's not too far down the road. So these are a lot of what I have here is asphalt. So the specialty nature of the tennis court is what drives that price. The 2 important ones as far as our perspective, the ADA audit that the city did illustrated that our parking lots are not compliant from an ADA standpoint. Sylvan Hill is in really rough shape, even though Riverside ranked out a little bit above that. I looked at that parking lot, and I can actually set a tape measure down inside the asphalt that's touching the base underneath. There's cracks in there to that extent. So, perhaps not quite at the high level of some of the other things that came forward, but those are what we are seeing. So.
I have a question on the playground equipment. With our cyclical replacement that we had been doing with CIP, with playgrounds every year, isn't this one the last one that wasn't done?
There's 2 left. There's River Highlands
And Westview?
and Westview, correct.
Okay.
Yep, Westview is, I think, 3 or 4 years newer, so
Yeah.
that would be the last one to
Yeah,
replace.
and it's actually in decent shape.
Westview's in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Not a push to replace that at this time.
Okay. So that actually could wait for future CIP if need be.
Yes.
What about River Highlands? Is it not, part of the trouble we had when we started down this road was that the equipment was in terrible shape, and a lot of it wasn't ADA compliant, so.
Correct. We can continue to move along with River Highlands at this time. I mean, we're
It's
not
functional
we're not
enough to
like
get by?
Yes. I mean, we
Okay.
have corrected many things, so we're in pretty good shape with that
Okay.
as far as it. Yes.
Go ahead, Michael.
I got a question about the tennis court replacement. When we scored that for CIP, there was, I believe, a $25,000 from a local group that was available to us if we restriped that as a pickleball court. Is that offer still stand?
So here's where that stands. Because we had made that ask, and we had that person that was willing to contribute, and then it did not get approved. We haven't. That's where they know it sits right now. If this is looked at to move forward, we will re-enter those discussions. I don't want to guess as to the likelihood, but I would say likely still. So yes, there is a chance that money is
So
still on the table.
This price is the price separate from that, right? So it's actually 25,000 more, or do we need to score it for 110?
Help me out with what the price was on there.
135?
That was the estimated price for full reconstruct,
Okay.
not counting the 25. So you would
Okay.
subtract the 25
So
off
figure
of that.
roughly, at least 110 then?
Yes.
Assuming, okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Carol.
Well, actually, my question was about the police sit-stand. So maybe
Oh, okay.
at the
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, anybody else have questions on park projects that are on the spreadsheet? None, I think we're good. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, and so we had a question on those ergonomic desks then.
My question just was that, because we have the standing desk or whatever at school, but they just sit on a desk. So it's not the actual desk. So is there anything else like that you've looked at, or is there, like, I'm guessing those are for a particular reason, that those specific ones?
So are they a retrofit, or are they the entire new desk? Is that what you're asking?
They are an entire desk, aren't they, the sit-stand desks?
No, but I'm glad I have the opportunity to address this. We have those type systems at work. We also have desks that raise. We know that if you look at the ergonomic experts, they say having all of your work here as opposed to just a keyboard coming up. But I'm not here to tell you that this is a giant priority for us. We've addressed, I mean, off the top of my head, we were going to address 40-some desks or workstations at the police department. We've accomplished 7 of those through another project that was funded by this group to create a private detective area. I'm perfectly comfortable picking those off, 1 or 2 or 3, or as we do adjustments. You have multiple requests for us to utilize these dollars. This is my lowest priority. I absolutely don't want to go down the path that we were before, but the fencing is a priority for the safety of our staff. And you've heard me talk for quite some time about the priority of additional officers. I won't even shoot dirty looks or anything if this sits at the bottom. And Mary Ann and I had to talk about this, and she's like, well, the request was to bring them all back. So that's why you're seeing it.
Yeah, I think we were just looking at where we left everything, so that we have a
Right.
holistic look at what is on the potential list, and, you know, obviously, we can all score them accordingly too then, so.
I mean, we have a lot of people that stand up and do their work. I don't get it. I sit. So that's me.
Okay. Any other questions on this sheet then at all? Okay. So that is the work in progress on capital.
Yep.
Go
You
ahead.
know, I think if we rank these, we will at least have a priority list to go by. I don't know that you necessarily have to feel obligated to spend it all immediately, but in talking to Eric and Alan, you know, many of these will have to, there might be some engineering work. You
And
have to
bids.
bid it out, so they don't want to get into a situation where we delay too long.
So if it's anything that has to do with the construction season, we probably should be ahead of that rather
Yeah.
than wait until summer.
Yes.
Is that the message?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. And then we had one late arrival. The airport submitted some requests for consideration too, so I included those in the packet
Okay,
as well.
and so we have the airport
John
manager with
Schmelz
us
here.
tonight, so we can bring up Airport Manager Schmiel. He can kind of walk us through his projects. I think some of these projects are actually either in parallel or in addition to projects that have been previously considered for both CIP and infrastructure bill funding, correct?
That's correct. My goal here is to try to minimize the impact on the local taxpayer. So to go down the list here, the Hangar 2 roof replacement, that is a fairly urgent thing. Hangar number 2 is one of the corporate hangars. It houses 6 aircraft. It's where the maintenance on the aircraft is done. There were leaks discovered in that roof in 2022. We tried to repair them, couldn't. Last fall, just before winter started, it was determined that the roof would need to be replaced, and there was possibly some damage under there. So I'm trying to get that problem taken care of. That building is also on the historic list, so it makes things a little bit more challenging. It's not like we can say in the future we're going to tear that building down and put up a new one. So it's just something to consider. Terminal building rehab, we've been going to the FAA for money for the terminal building rehab. That building was built in 1952. For some reason, the FAA has delayed funding for most of our capital requests, including this building. Not all the areas of the building are FAA eligible. So what I'm requesting here is all the things that we can't fund through the FAA to minimize the output with city taxpayer money. That includes floor coverings, the roof, HVAC, that sort of thing. That way we'll get almost a 100% rehabilitated building, so to speak, when that project's completed. Let's see, flight training and community room. We originally had included this part of the terminal project as an expansion on the terminal, but determined that it would make our project less eligible for FAA funding. if we included in there, so we cut it out. The reason we're going for that is the airport here at Wausau is probably the busiest flight school in north central Wisconsin, and we're running out of room to provide that service to Wausau, to the Wausau area. So we were hoping to get a classroom, a simulator room, which would allow us to continue with the flight training that we do at the airport. Let's see here. T hangar 1 through 10 demolition and construction. So because the FAA funding on all the projects has been delayed 3 years, this project is eligible for FAA funding. But I mean, if you look, I'll be presenting our new CIP for 2025. Everything gets pushed down. And so we're not going to be able to get the FAA funding for replacement of those hangars. Probably, we're looking into probably 6 or 7 years from now. That building was built in 1952. We've been asking for money to do preventative maintenance on it through the CIP process. It hasn't ever ranked whenever we've requested it. So now we're looking at probably the best plan is to demolish it and put up a new row of hangars. The new row of hangars would probably produce $18,000 a year worth of revenue for the city, as opposed to under $10,000 right now with the current building that we have. And hangars do pay for themselves over time. And if we can get other governments to build the hangar for us, that revenue stream is even better. Let's see, the last item here.
Hangar 2 office. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
is your last one.
Okay, so Hangar 2 being the oldest building on the airport, which was constructed in, I want to say 1927, it has offices connected to it that were the old FBO building. We moved out of there in 1998. Since then, we've allowed the Civil Air Patrol to use it. They vacated that earlier this year, so that those offices are all empty now. So we have one or two roads that we could go down here. We can demolish that building so we don't have to, or that part of the building, so we don't have to worry about maintaining it anymore. Or we can demolish it, we can refurbish it and use it as a classroom for police and fire. That idea was brokered by Leo, the buildings manager, as a way to use it for police and fire to do training for whatever they have to do, but it would make it easier for the airport to integrate training for aviation emergencies into their training. So I would welcome that, and I would welcome the police presence at the airport.
Okay. All right. But your classroom space would be separate from that building? You wouldn't be operating your flight classroom from back there?
Correct.
Okay.
That's a whole different project.
Okay.
The flight training area would be an expansion on the current terminal building to the east towards Hangar 4.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have questions on any of the airport projects? Okay. When I first saw this, I thought this looked an awful lot like the CIP requests that I've seen in the past, and they're not really that different. They kind of operate in parallel. One of the things in our scoring matrix that we have to score on is whether or not other funding exists and has been accessed. You know, obviously that plays into our decision-making as well. So we'll have to score these against all the others and see where we come out.
I appreciate the opportunity to explain my requests. Have a
Sounds
good
good.
evening.
Thanks for hanging in there with us. The hour grows late. Okay, that brings us to item number 9, discussion and possible action on authorizing the write-off of certain uncollectible delinquent personal property tax from the city's accounting records. And you'll recall, we do this every year, and the city attorney's office continues, though, even if we do this, to try to still collect from people, right? So,
Yes, and we are only allowed to charge back if they're out of business, if they're bankrupt, like, really, they're kind of done. If there's still a going concern, you are not allowed to charge back. And so the amount of, this is our 2022 taxes. So the taxes that we levied in December of 2022. We tried to collect those all through '23. This is what's left after that collection phase, because then now in December of '23, we started a whole new tax collection. And the amount of delinquencies is significantly down from past years, so that is great news. But as Lisa said, we charge these back to the school, county, and technical college, their share for those that are out of business or closed or bankrupt. And then if we subsequently collect from them, because we do continue to try to collect, then we share that collection back with that school, county, or tech.
Okay. All right. Questions on those? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, could we just state for the record, what is the total amount?
Jeez. I don't know.
I've closed it out already.
I know.
We can add it up,
Is
maybe.
like 14 grand?
About
Does it say at the
thought
end
it
of the
was
list?
roughly is probably good enough.
It's way less than what it
Yeah.
usually is. Usually it's six figures, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, no.
No?
It's usually somewhere between, I want to say $20,000 and $25,000, but my recollection, I can't find it in here either. It is, I thought 14,000, but I could be wrong, sorry. Let me see if I can find it.
Because it's on page 118?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's 8570 is the top part, and then there's 5464 in the pending litigation,
So it's got to be the sum total
Oh,
of
yeah.
those, right?
Yes.
so about 14, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, 14,000 then.
Thank you.
Wow, way less. Okay.
Yes.
That's good news for us.
Yes.
So do we have a motion then to complete that write-off? Motion from Martin, second from Watson. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. That brings us to item 10, which is discussion and possible action on community care paramedic position for the fire department. And so we'll bring up Chief Kopp. This is probably his third meeting where he's talked about this. Public Health and Safety blessed this at their last meeting and are excited about the impact that could be made here. So he included in the packets the PowerPoint that he offered us in the other committee. And I guess for the anyone that's watching on public access at home, if they'd like to see it on the screen, you could bring that up. Otherwise, it's page 119 in the packets. And welcome.
Thank you. Very exciting, this proposal for community care paramedic. One, because it addresses a growing issue in our community as far as healthcare goes, an issue that's across the nation as well. It's also exciting in the fact that it's very innovative and a lot of collaboration that went into it. When I speak to the collaboration, I speak to myself, Deputy Chief Plus, Chief Barnes from the Police Department, Laura Scuderi from Marathon County Health Department, and Tara Drager from Aspirus, to name a few of the partners, but the big ones that put a lot of research time and data into this whole package. So I'm very excited to propose it to you guys tonight, and I guess if we're going to go through the PowerPoints, I will follow along with that rather than going on my own. I know it's getting late, so I wanted to try to get you guys through as quick as possible.
You want to start? It's warming up.
No problem. I'll just start with saying the purpose of this proposal signifies our commitment to the innovation and proactive healthcare delivery through a community care paramedic program, ultimately leading to a healthier, more resilient community in our county and in our city. The program would use our limited existing resources strategically to reduce growing barriers and address key health needs. Maybe for awkward silence, I'll keep reading some stuff to
Okay.
you guys here. So a little bit of overview. Patient-centered approach to, the community care paramedic is a patient-centered approach to a growing problem. That of increasing medical costs, aging populations, and increased use of emergency responders for non-urgent situations. Community care paramedics manage chronic health conditions, prevent acute conditions from getting worse, and stop an illness before it can even begin. And this is by educating and using preventative measures. I see the first slide is up, so we'll start there. I already talked about the first bullet point, but the second one is to reduce the use of ambulances, first access point to healthcare. You've all heard us speak over the years of our growing call volume. It's not going down. It hasn't gone down. We're setting records every year, and one of the one of the things we're looking at with this position is to look at our high utilizers and find ways to get them in touch with the healthcare providers that they need, and not just transports to the hospital and then finding them a way back home. The third bullet point is reduce emergency room usage by non-acute and repeat patients. That kind of goes along the same lines of what I was speaking to. If any of you have been in the ED emergency room as of late, it's long wait times. They're triaging people according to their injuries, and the ones that can wait are waiting for the more serious ones to be taken care of. It's a problem that's growing in our community and across the nation, and one of the reasons that Aspirus is such a big partner in this. The next one is reducing readmissions. Again, that's going back to taking care of people in their home and educating them and making sure that they can take care of themselves with a little bit of help from us without having to be readmitted into the hospital. Building relations with other healthcare resources within the community. We're going to hear me talk a lot about referrals. The referrals will go both ways. The referrals will go to the community care paramedic and from a lot of different organizations, including the healthcare center, the hospitals. It could be our shelters. It could be our other paramedics that don't have time to stay on a lot of scenes because of the call volume that they're responding to. And then it can go back and forth also, where our community care paramedic could make a referral to the proper physician or to the proper healthcare provider or to someone at the healthcare center to help the patient with whatever the issue might be. The last bullet point is an exciting one too, and if we talked with Chief Barnes about this as well as Tracy Rieger, but to assist the community outreach coordinator with access to healthcare for our clients. We talk a lot about some of the issues we have in the city of Wausau with our unhoused, and a lot of times they're just calling for transport because they don't know what else to do, and this community care paramedic might be a link to help them find the resources they need or get them to the resources they need without just a wasted trip to the ER. We'll skip right over this one and go to the next slide. I've been doing a lot more research as of even today, talking with Madison Fire Department, who's got a very successful program. Their numbers are just phenomenal of what they've tracked over the time of when they started their programs, and they show so much increase in saved revenue for their people in their city and their communities, as well as getting legislation in place to be able to move forward with pushing our state leaders to help us get reimbursed for Medicare, Medicaid for our community care paramedics. So Madison's really leading the game in the state of Wisconsin and taking a lot of things from overseas from departments that are doing it from there. So I could speak about that for a long time, but I don't want to get too far in the weeds for you guys. They're already up to 10 community care paramedics in the city of Madison, and they're looking at growing even more. That's what kind of impact it's made and the kind of what they've done in their community and getting buy-in from other stakeholders. Following up is how they're getting the funding for it, and I believe that's how we can continue to get funding the same way by keeping track of the stats and the data and making sure that other communities buy into the idea and help us fund it. The next one, let's touch a little bit on the referral process. I kind of talked about that a little bit, but you can see some of the examples up there, and that's one that we've hit on in the past. And when we tried to do this with our online personnel a few years back, it didn't go real well because there wasn't the buy-in, there wasn't the what I envision this community care paramedic to have is a very detailed history with understanding our community, knowing how to get along with our patients and our people in our community, and understanding the goal of that position rather than just going through the motions because we're asking them to as line personnel. On the next slide, you'll see that the first home visit assessment tools, we're looking at taking care of food security, making sure the patient has good nutritional resources, and making sure that we give them the resources to get to that point if they don't have it. Trips and falls is a huge one, especially in our county and in Wausau, across the nation as well. But trips and falls right now is the leading cause of people getting transported to the hospital and the leading cause of death in our nation. It's not going down in our community either, and in order to prevent it, a lot of times we need to get in the homes and make sure that we are helping people to identify these trips and fall hazards. That can range from anything from throw rugs to broken railings to uneven stairs, and the list goes on and on. So that's very important to get into and take care of that situation before it gets worse. We can also do fire and life safety assessments. Right now, we do that as inspections, doing 2 inspections a year in every business and every commercial unit in our city. We do not get into people's houses, but now that we can do that, this can be part of that assessment, is getting in, making sure they have working smoke alarms, working CO detectors, and things of the sort, just making sure their home is fire safe. Prescription drugs, a lot of times these patients are seeing multiple physicians, multiple providers, and getting a multitude of different drugs and not knowing when to take them, medications. This community care paramedic can make the right contact calls, get in touch with these physicians and medical providers and make sure that they are taking the appropriate meds at the appropriate time. A lot of times they're confused and not sure what to do or how to take it or when to take it. So. The next slide I already talked about, so we'll skip over that one. Some of the things we're looking for in this position, we'd like to find a paramedic with at least 3 years of experience, preferably in Wausau, because we want them to know our community and have the experience in our community. Preferably a background in community care medicine. That's recently become, there's a lot of tech schools that are offering different classes that can get you a certificate in that field. We want to be, like I talked about before, we want them to be able to build relationships and work well independently, as well as working well with Tracy Rieger. We're going to equip them with a cardiac monitor and all the tools that you might see on an ambulance for first aid and initial care before an ambulance might have to come, if that's ever the case, as well as documenting and working well with their physicians. And then we also want to make sure that they have a labeled vehicle to get around the city in. Our vision is to have a 3-year trial period and have quarterly checkups to make sure that we are making a difference, making sure that we're making a positive difference and showing with our data that this is something that can be sustained and something that we can grow from and even take on more challenges as we start to conquer the challenges we face early on. And it just have to have positive impact. So the next slide is probably the most exciting because this is the finance committee, right? And we want to talk about the finances of the whole thing. What's exciting right now is that we got commitment from Aspirus to fund 50% of the costs for the community care paramedic for the next 3 years, which comes to $52,000 per year from Aspirus. We also got a commitment from the Alexander Foundation for the $65,000 equipment setup, and then a match with the city up to $50,000 for this position for the oncoming year. This is something they'll evaluate at the end of every year, and as long as we're making a difference, they will look at different ways of funding us and helping us move forward with this position. With that being said, as exciting as that is, I will say that that will not deter Deputy Chief Plus or myself from continuing to look for funding, no matter where we can find it, and work together with our community partners and other cities and villages and towns to make sure that we can grow this program even county-wide or bigger. So that's kind of any questions on the finances part of it? I went through that kind of faster than I thought I would.
So I guess if we just pencil through the numbers, then the numbers we see as far as our estimated total cost, I mean, we're looking at, once we have the partner funding in, so 2024, so half of 192,000, and then up to 50,000 of that from a foundation. Is that where you're?
Correct. With that funding of the $65,000 coming in, I think we could use a general number of $130,000 for each year.
Okay.
So, with the Alexander Foundation matching whatever, the city does up to $50,000, as well as the or the $52,000 coming from Aspirus. Those are the numbers we could look at. I think that would be roughly
So it's 102,000 off of
and-
130? Is that?
correct.
Yeah, okay. So 28,000 roughly.
Yes, and as I spoke with Mary Ann the other day, if, you know, our vision is to put this in place as soon as possible because the problem's not getting any smaller. You know, if we could do something that's close to June, as you guys were talking about ARPA funding, the fire department has ARPA funding for personnel for the remainder of this year that we're not even getting close to using because we were unable to fill so many of those firefighter positions by the end of this year and from last year. So I would propose that that money's there and I would give Deputy Chief Plus and myself another 6 months to find additional funding going into the next couple of years.
That feels like it would make sense. I mean, what we've done before was we've done a shift of purpose with those funds that we had previously given. You know, if we would shift the purpose of, I mean, we've got that account sitting, you know, for those extra firefighters, and you've hired some, but certainly not 12. So, you know, I guess we'd have the option to divert 28,000 of that to get through 2024.
And to be able to capitalize on the funding from the Alexander
Right.
Foundation.
Those partnerships are really, I mean, I guess in terms of the level of collaboration and the different partners at the table, it's amazing to see that kind of partnership from within the community wanting to make that impact. That's pretty exciting. I guess, questions? Sarah?
Okay, so the 65,000, so I'm looking at the tables up here, right? So the 65,000 equipment, that's going to be from the Alexander Foundation, right?
Correct.
Plus 50,000 match from the city.
Correct,
Okay.
Up to.
And up to 50. So if we do at least 50.
which I don't know that we would need that much. I'd put in pencil to paper, I think it would be roughly over 20,000 with the 52,000 from Aspirus.
So then,
Or,
because if you
I
take
could have that wrong right now.
192 minus 65, and then minus 52 from Aspirus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then that would be what's left over, right?
It's calculator time.
Yeah, I should have wrote this down. Thought I had it in my head. 52,000.
Can you go back?
Sorry.
Dang.
So
Minus 50.
80,
So
go.
75,000 divided by 2?
thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
37.5?
37,500 would be the city's commitment.
Yeah.
But that's just.
And so then the Alexander Foundation would do the remaining 37.5 to get us up to 75 for that
Correct.
first year.
Correct.
And then the second year, Aspirus would still have the commitment of 52, or that would be exhausted after the first year?
Nope, Aspirus is committed to 3 years at 52,000.
Okay. And then the Alexander Foundation would match up to 50 both years? Or-
Correct.
Okay, so 52.
And like I said, we already have a few leads with other funding, not to mention, once we succeed, and I've talked with other chiefs in the area, of once we start succeeding and start growing, it would be like a kind of a mutual aid thing and start getting funding from other cities and villages.
So I think
This
it'd
is
be
one of my
about
visions.
39,000 the second year.
So 28 the first year, 39 the second.
No, it'd be 37.5 the first year.
37.5
37.5 the first year and 39 the second year.
Yeah.
And that vehicle lease is kind of an estimate, so I'm almost certain we'll have some money in that equipment fund to work towards that vehicle lease.
Okay.
So that number could even be less.
And
Sure.
then how much is left over from the ARPA firefighters
There's like
allocation?
$500,000, I want to say close to, I can open that up.
There was, it was originally 771. We moved some over for Tracy Rieger's position to the PD, and then we were well short of our 500,000. I can't remember the number I sent you, Mary Ann.
I'm getting there.
That rings a bell, though.
And with that, we'd be able to use that for ARPA funds for the 2025 year? No?
Just 24.
Just the 6 months
24.
from this year.
Yeah.
So not even if we had it
Encumbered.
out, yeah, no?
No.
They
Okay.
don't consider that it encumbrances a contract to purchase goods or services.
Okay.
And
So
not-
we could do the 37.5 with a shift of the funds he has already.
Yes.
Okay.
So he has $478,000 available right now.
Okay. And so then we also then, through our budget process for 2025, we could find the 39, right? I mean, that's what we'd have to do, is find the 39, our portion, to continue the partnership, but that would be part of our summer budget process. Okay. And so, let me switch back to the agenda. So we have this actually on for possible action as well. So if you guys wanted to make a motion to shift the purpose of some of his previously approved ARPA to the tune of $37,500 to this project, we could take that motion tonight. Motion from Watson, is there a second? Second by Martins.
Second, and I also have a comment.
Go ahead,
too.
sure.
But actually, the actual commitment would be less because it's only 6 months. So, if this position starts in June, it's not going to be the whole 37,500. So the wages
Be
and
cut in
benefits
half, right?
would approximately, but we could say up to 37,000.
Let's do up
I
to
can work with
37, that way
HR.
whatever his actual is for the months that it's in play,
Yeah.
then they won't have to come back and fine tune it if we're short, so. Okay, so then that motion would be to shift up to 37,500 to community care paramedic from the previously approved ARPA. Motion by Watson, comment. Well, we had a motion in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So the wages and benefits for 2024 were for a full year of implementation, or is that only a half year?
Yeah,
I guess it would
I
be-
stole that from last year's proposal, so
Okay.
that was for the full year 2024 for the 192 at startup.
Okay, so then the wages and benefits would just be adjusted probably.
Probably to
for-
55, right?
Yeah, for year two. Okay. thanks.
Sure. Okay. So with a motion and a second on the floor then to shift those funds to get this started, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries. Okay, thank you for that. I know
Thank you.
that has been a lot of research and a lot of work, but I think that it can really do some good in our
it, guys.
community, especially where we have seniors that we want to assist with aging in place. That's huge, if we want to be a senior-friendly environment. So with that, item 11, the last item is discussion and possible action on community duties and responsibilities. I think you've all seen this in our other committees. The city attorney's office has been working on fine-tuning the descriptions of what each committee does, where we appear in the ordinances, and what we show online as a description of what we do, to make sure that what we tell people we do is really the work that we do, that this matches, and make sure that when people sign up, when they're newly elected to participate on a committee, they know what they're in for. So Ann's gone back to the original work from when some of this stuff was adopted in the 60s. She's working on truing up some of the website descriptions. In my discussion with her, she said that this was actually one of the easier ones because this committee is actually performing all the work it's supposed to. And so under our ordinances, other than truing up the website description, she didn't find a whole lot of need for us to change because we've kind of been evolving our description when the procurement policy gets adjusted, our budget process, our CIP. So, I mean, we keep on top of our mission as far as articulating it in our policies. And so this one was actually one of the easier ones she had to go through. Does anyone have any questions on what she found here? She gave us a detailed write-up of, where she finds us. But it did seem to her that the work that we perform is the work that has always been laid out for us.
I move to approve and accept.
Okay, motion
Move
to
on.
approve. And I think what she was asking for us to do is to approve this and then authorize her to make adjustments to the website as needed for the description to make sure it doesn't read like 1966. So at least that was, so if there was any tweaking needed to the online description, she would get that taken care of for us as well. So we have a motion from Denny to accept the research, second by Watson. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No one's opposed. And we finally, in 2 sessions here, come to the end, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Watson, second by Lukens. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No one's ever opposed, so we'll stand adjourned then. Thank you, everyone, for breaking this into what turned out to be 2 meetings in one night.